Okay, so let's talk about control. When we saw it around E3, we was a little bit confused, but I was really drawn in. I was like,
wonderful.
I want this. It feels like this live action. It kind of felt like a video, like a movie. And so let's talk about what exactly is the game. I know there's some sci-fi going on, and government agencies.
Yes. So I mean, it's a supernatural action adventure set here in New York, and yes, at the center of it we have this clandestine government agency called the Federal Bureau of Control, and they deal with the unexplainable phenomenon. They look for it. They look for these things that they call altered world events, where our known laws of reality have, for some mysterious reason, been intruded upon by these unknown forces, and things have changed. They look for these things. They bring the evidence back to their headquarters. They investigate. They try to understand. They try to use these things, and so the headquarters is here in Manhattan. It's this kind of hiding in plain sight. It's this brutalist architecture, featureless concrete skyscraper called the oldest house. And the whole game takes place inside the headquarters. But it's this mystical place of power that something that the Bureau is investigating also. It can be a vastly bigger place in the inside than the outside walls would lead you to believe. So when the conditions are right, and if you know the rules, and if you know the ritualistic steps, suddenly there is a door where there was no door before, and you can keep on traveling deeper and deeper into this building. So that's the setting. And our hero, played by Courtney, Jesse Faden, she has had this strange encounter with the unexplainable when she was a young child, and it changed her. And she has been looking for answers ever since. And now, following clues and being drawn, she, at the beginning of the game, comes to the oldest house and steps in. And then it gets really weird. So it's like buckle up and lift off. And,
exactly. So for you, how did you take on this role when voicing the character?
Yeah, well, Sam had called and asked if I wanted to be part of it, and I said absolutely. I had done Quantum Break with them as Beth Wilder, and so, Jesse has kind of been ever developing as the story's developing, and so for me, I feel like I've really tackled like the core elements of who Jessie is and what she represents and what she's fighting for, and but all the little details of what she develops into and what she faces, and the obstacles, and even things from her past that are coming forth and are relevant in the story now. Just stuff like that is kind of still there's still things that I'm working with and working out, because we're still in the midst of creating, shooting and creating the game. But I definitely looked at Jessie as what do I want her to represent as a woman, as a female lead, as this really cool character, stuff like that. And how does she differ from Beth? How is she the same? Because I just in the sense that it's the same company, it's Remedy. So, what they look for, in a character in itself, and kind of how can I use my experience that I've already had with them and bring it into this, and then how can I pick out what's the same and then kind of go running with what's different.
So I was wondering, in the process of creating this character, do you work closely with the writers? Does that help you when you're creating this character?
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge thing is too, like, I think the difference, in a game is a lot of the stuff happens behind the scenes, as opposed to like in a movie you get the whole script, and this time around was a little bit different because I didn't have necessarily like the whole entire beginning to end, and I could, pick from that and then pick their brain and then create it. I think, with Jessie, every time I had gone over to Finland and even here, it's sitting down with them and collaborating with them, but also picking, Sam's brain and the other people working on this game going like, okay, what exactly is happening? Like, what exactly is going on? Because I like I said, I had bits and pieces of it, but it was absolutely, I needed their help to kind of flush everything out and figure out exactly what I needed to know to make her as exciting and as in-depth as possible.
Now with the design aspect, it's very slick. It looks beautiful.
Thank
Can
you.
you talk about, now it takes place in New York City. Was that inspired by real life, because we're in New York City right now?
Yep.
Or was that like, you just so happened to be in Manhattan? Like what inspired the design aspect of that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from many directions. To me, New York has always just resonated as almost like, not maybe the real New York, but the pop culture version of New York, almost this mystical kind of modern city that has different hidden sides to it. And obviously in Max Payne, we were in New York. Alan Wake comes from New York and goes to a small town, and now it just felt like thinking about this and thinking about the bureau that it would be great to set the game in Manhattan, and that it just kind of brings so much with it from the pop culture perspective that it felt like the right choice.
Now, for you, we always take away like a piece of a role when we bring it to ourselves. How did this game, working with it, how does it change you in your personal life?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like there are a lot of similarities to Jesse as, that I have, even experiences that Jesse's gone through. And so for me, it's been, a reflective experience for me to look at maybe like what I've gone through and how I came, to be who I am today, and kind of look at Jessie and her journey and see what she's going through. And is it going to be a similar outcome? Is it going to be different? I think it's just been kind of, like I said, like more of a reflective experience in looking through. And then also, finding the strengths, because it's always interesting going into a game or going into a project in general, a story that has very profound and out there and even high stakes situations, because in life sometimes you don't go through these crazy high stakes situations, at least you hope some people do, but so it's been interesting too to kind of look at in those moments, and as far as like characteristics go of a human being, what is brought forth, like what and it also makes me think for me, like, wow, I was in this situation, because I don't really ever do, like, if I was in this, it's always I create in my own mind my imagination and the stories evolving around each of the characters, and I bring in my human experience, but not necessarily my personal experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that has really allowed me to, take a look at some of the experiences that Jesse goes through and go, as a human, what are the different possibilities that could arise, or different reactions to be able to take action to the next step.
Can we talk about the filming part of it? Like, how was that? Are you in the studio with the whole motion capture?
We're still in the midst of doing all of that. We're still doing that.
Shoots happening.
Yes.
But certainly, full body motion capture, performance capture, that kind of the facial expressions, and then audio recordings all combined. Yes.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of imaginations that you have to do during.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like I said, we haven't gotten to this part fully yet, but even like on Quantum Break, it was like, you have a volume and you have like, different structures that are created out of like pipes and it's like, okay, now that is a boat and that is a car and that is this. And so in your mind, you create these things, what they look like. What I always think so interesting is, then it's all rendered together and they do have it on the screen. And so then even though I'm looking at pipes, I can look at the TV and see what it actually looks like. So it is it's like just a big playground. And I know that this is, we've done a lot of like the facial performance, some of the facial performance capture so far, but as far as like the motion capture, I'm excited to see what this time around will be too, because each time it's different. You never know. Do you have this element, this scene yet for me to see, or is it in my mind? And then you hope if it's in your mind that it looks like it does there, because it's, yeah. So
now with the development part, can you talk a bit about what can we expect? It looks like a really action adventure, the sci-fi element, you guys suspense. What exactly inspired the sci-fi elements? You don't really see that so much.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean it is a action game. You know, a lot of action in there. A lot of really crazy action as well, because it is a weird world, and Jesse has these supernatural abilities like telekinesis, lifting up objects, and levitating, you know, and we have multiple different abilities like this that the player gets to unlock and use. So it does get crazy, and enemies coming at you will have similar powers as well. But you know, and we went into this kind of gameplay first. We knew that we want to create almost like this sandbox, deep action game experience with different mechanics, and the player, you know, adapting to the situation. Like I will rather use this ability and this form of my mystical service weapon, and you know that idea was there early on, and then it was kind of a really fun, interesting challenge that let's now create the world and fiction that really kind of elevates this and frames this, and it got really weird. so the literary genre, you know, that is very much part of our inspiration here is new weird. So you know, and there are certainly, you know, familiar elements from science fiction and fantasy, but maybe given to you in a form that makes it more dangerous and more open to interpretation. That you know, in some ways, you know, classic science fiction and fantasy, they give you a simpler world than the real world is. Like there are answers and there is the right way of doing things. But in New Weird, it's more like this complex real world model applied to these, you know, unknown forces, where, you know, maybe some of these things are beyond our current human understanding, and maybe there is no one right answer. Maybe there are competing theories about what this means or what it could mean, and so, you know, this is less holding to the player, more here is this crazy world, you know, and it's more fragmented, and in some ways Jesse's journey is more dreamlike in some aspects, and then it's up to the player to chase this mystery and find their answers and put it together and make their own interpretation of what this is about.
Were there any complications? Because you have different elements going on, and you're creating something new. This is like a huge new step. So what was the complications that arose from this?
It is challenging, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of, you know, sitting down together and workshopping and figuring it out. And making these games, it's always an iterative process. You have an idea, then a lot of work goes into making sure that the technology and the tools can create something. And once it's up there on the screen, I mean, I've been working with games for 23 years.
Right.
And I firmly believe that no matter how long you would work on games, you never know, you know, what works and what doesn't work until you have it up and running and you're testing it out. And then you discover, like, yeah, this was a really awesome idea, everybody was excited, it's not working. Or, you know, in some cases it's like, but this thing that's there almost by accident as an afterthought, that's actually working really, really well. So let's shift to that direction and go with that and go further into that. So especially when you are creating a new IP, a new concept and a new game like Control is, there is a lot of discoveries, a lot of prototyping, a lot of iterative work, and a big team effort for finding out. You know, it's we are all on this journey together, discovering what is the world of Control and you know, the different aspects. And some of it is like, yeah, we are leaving this out, and maybe, you know, maybe it's sometimes these things end up growing into a new game idea later on, but for this, yeah, that's not part of this now. And, you know, a lot of discovery along the way.
for both of you, what was the most surprising element to the game?
It's a tough question. A big challenge and an interesting, exciting thing here is just the fact that our previous games have been very linear in nature, and this one purposefully isn't. Like, yes, there is a story to follow through, Jesse's story, but at the same time, the world is open for exploration, and there are all kinds of side stories and side missions to go after and discover. And from that perspective, like, using the world also as a storytelling tool, like, you can discover this piece of information and this piece of story here, but some players might not never see it, and they discover this other thing, and creating this play field for discovering this fiction and story, that's been a new thing, and challenging, yes, a lot of discoveries once again, but exciting to me as well.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, as far as, I'm still going through and we're still shooting, parts of it. So I know there'll be other things that arise. But I do think one of the biggest things that surprised me is that it is, even though, like he said, Jesse's story is linear, that there's so many different avenues of exploration, different elements to it. Like, even as we're going through and shooting it and tackling this, and it's like we have to make sure, all of, our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, and all the different pieces are tied together, and so for me as an actor, it's interesting also to be immersed in it, but also to take a step back and watch it all kind of unfold and develop, and then I come back, every, couple months, and things have changed and things have grown, and I think that's what's so surprising to me is that, they're constantly pursuing deeper and more and more exciting, and it's fun every time I come back, and surprising to me, going like, okay, so what do we have now, and it's like, oh, we got this thing, and so that's really cool for me to see.
So as an actor in video games, are you able to, like, when you play the game later on, are you able to separate yourself from, like, the character, so you, like, just enjoy it for just the player that you are? Or are you always seeing, like, oh, I remember this part here, remember that?
I did, yeah. When I played Quantum Break, my boyfriend and I sat down and we played it, and I played a bit of it, but then I also too wanted him to play it too, and have somebody else that wasn't there, who is a huge gamer, kind of seeing what his reaction was. But I definitely was like, but it was funny for me too, because there was moments of it where I was like, oh, I do remember this part, or like, wow, like when did I do that? I don't remember saying that, like, stuff like that, where so it was a little bit of both. But then there was definite moments where I was thrown, because even in shooting Quantum Break, I was just Beth. There was a lot of Jack stuff that I never saw, and so that to me was really cool to see how the story developed and like where it ended up, and piece it all together. I did get lost in it, even though I was there, and I had Jack whispering in Beth's ear, stuff like that. It's like that was in a volume on set, and when I saw it, it just was so cool and so different, and you really do get attached to the characters and drawn into the story. And even though I was Beth, it was seeing it all together and with everybody together collaborating and working together was, I got immersed in it. It's cool. So I'm excited to see what happens with Control as Jesse, because it is a more broader experience for me as being the lead of it, and seeing what happens with Jesse.
And we kind of in this, as a comparison point also, because Jesse is the main character, we do go deeper into her mind in this and learn a lot more about the character along the way.
And also, really quickly, now, because it's such open box, where do you find the line between making sure that you have the game that you want, and then also the little other things, extras that you want to add in there, so you don't go overboard? How do you rein it in?
Can you go overboard?
I don't know. Like, can you? Like, but eventually, you have to rein it in.
Ultimately, yes. There needs to be kind of. There is absolutely no shortage of really exciting, cool ideas. It's a big theme of very talented, creative people who make a video game happen, and a lot of ideas, and but then you have to, always look at it that is this really for this game, this idea, and is it serving greater purpose here, and does it add to it, or make it, break it down in a wrong way, and there is a lot of kind of thinking to be done, and obviously unfortunately we live in a world where resources and schedules and budget matter, so you can't just keep on endlessly adding to it, and you just need to get it done as well, so all of these different elements combined and just figuring out a right balance. Yeah.
How has Control changed the way you make games?
I think that it's an evolving process from many perspectives, actually. I mean, one thing that is really, really interesting about games is that they are so much tied to the technology. And the technology is going forward all the time. So in some ways, every single game you make is the first of its kind on some level, like to the point where you realize at times like nobody on this planet has ever tried to do this thing ever before, because it hasn't, from the technology point, even been possible, and now we are doing it for the first time and trying it out. So that keeps evolving. That you suddenly have some things that were completely out of reach. You could never have even considered it. Now it's an option and possibility, and you are trying things out. So that makes it evolve and change all the time. But one other aspect here is that so far we've done very linear, experiences. Now we wanted to create an experience that's more long-lasting, where the player has an option of coming back to it and discovering more and exploring more and taking other challenges in the experience. That has certainly been the first time for us at Remedy, and a lot of learnings from that. Yes.
So can you talk about any of the stages that's in the game that we're going to see?
Sorry?
Can you talk about any of the stages in the game that we're going to see? A little bit?
Specific scenes or
specific scenes, anything that's... Because we don't know that much.
Right, yeah. Well...
Can you say anything?
It's a mystery.
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe some characters?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like, I mean, Jesse, we've talked about now a lot, and here at Comic-Con for this one, we have the panel later today, and the idea is to bring together, several actors from this, and the fun part of it is that we have a bit of a Remedy All-Stars cast for this one. So Jesse is our hero, and then we have James McCaffrey, who is the voice of Max Payne, in the role of Trench, who is the previous director of the Bureau, and James is playing Trench. Trench is somebody that when Jesse comes in at the beginning of the game, she finds Trench dead on the floor, but because this is a very strange mystical journey, Trench is still present with Jesse through the journey, almost as a ghost of the previous director appearing to her. And then we have Matthew Porretta, who is the voice of Alan Wake, and he plays Dr. Casper Darling, who is the head scientist of the Bureau, dealing with the most classified, most dangerous, unexplainable phenomenons, pushing the boundaries of our known reality, and so a really kind of, people who we've worked with before and kind of trusted, partners in this, that we've been really happy to work with, bringing them all together for the first time into this.
And what kind of research went involved with this game in order to create it?
Research? Well, I mean, many different. I mean, game is a big, complex system of its own. So certainly, kind of like there are things on the architectural side, like brutalist architecture. Then to create a big kind of conflict and contrast between, you know, the bureau and brutalist architecture and these mystical supernatural forces that threaten the reality, you know, with a lot of fluid and a lot of gas-like things. You know, artists do a lot of research on this thing. On the story side, maybe like, you know, New Weird being the literary genre, you know, and then dealing with, you know, having this bureau that deals with these unexplainable, and with that we have kind of like all kinds of urban legends and all kinds of weird concepts like Jungian, you know, archetypes and collective unconscious and all of these, you know, ideas that are, you know, nice source of inspiration for crafting this world.
Sounds amazing. I'm like, I'm going to play it right now.
Next year.
Next year. I know.
Yes,
I know.
yes.
This game is right now.